The air hung thick with the scent of extinguished candles and stale frosting, a cruel mockery of celebration. Outside, the first tendrils of dawn clawed at the darkness, mirroring the way the betrayal was tearing at my insides. They were all there, gathered in the kitchen, their laughter a jagged blade twisting in the wound they'd inflicted. My 18th birthday, the day I'd dreamt of for years, had become a casualty of my younger brother's latest tantrum, another sacrifice on the altar of his insatiable ego. They thought they had broken me that day, watching me walk away, silent, defeated. But they were wrong. That was the day Bella disappeared, and the architect of their downfall was born. If you've ever felt like your family valued someone else over you, subscribe now and share your story in the comments. The cancellation of my birthday party wasn't some isolated incident. It was the culmination of years of blatant favoritism towards my brother, Ethan. From the moment he was born, Ethan was the golden child, the center of our parents' universe. His every whim was catered to, his every transgression excused. My accomplishments, my dreams, were always secondary, relegated to the shadows cast by his radiant presence. I excelled in school, earning top grades and scholarships, but my academic achievements were met with lukewarm praise compared to the lavish celebrations that followed Ethan's mediocre performance on the soccer field. My older sister, Sarah, and I learned early on that our needs were less important, our voices less audible. We were supporting players in the drama of Ethan's life. The subtle digs, the offhanded comments, Ethan needs more attention, he's just more sensitive. Bella, you're so responsible, you understand, had chipped away at my self-worth, leaving me feeling invisible, unworthy of love and attention. I tried to please them, to earn their approval, but it was like chasing a mirage in the desert, always out of reach. The day of my 18th birthday was supposed to be different. I had planned for months, envisioning a small gathering of close friends, a simple celebration of adulthood and independence. I had even saved up enough money from my part-time job to buy a dress I truly loved. But Ethan, predictably, threw a fit. He had wanted a new gaming console, a ridiculously expensive one, and when our parents refused, he erupted in a volcanic display of anger and tears. He screamed, he raged, he threatened to run away. And just like always, our parents caved. To appease his tantrum, they decided to postpone my party, claiming that it was insensitive to celebrate while Ethan was so upset. They told me we could reschedule, but I knew in my heart that it was a lie. My birthday would be forgotten, overshadowed by Ethan's drama, just like everything else in my life. That night, I locked myself in my room, the weight of years of neglect crushing me. The tears came, hot and furious, washing away the last vestiges of hope. I felt utterly alone, adrift in a sea of indifference. But amidst the despair, a flicker of something else ignited within me, a cold, hard ember of resentment. I realized that I couldn't keep living like this, constantly sacrificing my own happiness for the sake of others. I had to break free from the toxic cycle of favoritism and neglect. As I sat there in the darkness, a plan began to form, a plan to reclaim my life and to make them understand the true cost of their actions. The next morning, I packed a bag, wrote a short note, and left. I didn't tell them where I was going or when I would be back. I simply vanished. I wanted them to feel the void I had felt for so long. I wanted them to understand the consequences of their choices. I wanted them to realize that they couldn't take me for granted any longer. I was done being the invisible daughter, the silent observer. I was going to rewrite my story on my own terms. The person I trusted most, the one who always pretended to understand, Sarah, my own sister, was the first to defend them. "He's just a child, Bella. You're being selfish." That's when I knew they were all in on it. They had been playing their parts for years, and I was the fool who believed their charade. But now the game had changed. The city swallowed me whole, a concrete jungle indifferent to my pain. I found a dingy room in a rundown neighborhood, the kind of place where dreams went to die. The walls were paper-thin, the air thick with the smell of stale cigarettes and desperation. It was a far cry from the comfortable suburban life I had known, but it was mine. The silence was deafening at first, a stark contrast to the constant noise and drama of my family home. But soon, I found a strange solace in it, a sense of peace that I hadn't realized I was missing. I took a job as a waitress in a greasy diner, working long hours for minimum wage. The work was grueling, the customers demanding, but it was honest. and it gave me a sense of purpose, a feeling that I was finally in control of my own destiny. Every dollar I earned was a small victory, a testament to my independence. But the nights were the hardest. Sleepless hours haunted by memories of my family, of their laughter, their love, their betrayal. I replayed every moment, every slight, every injustice, searching for answers, for understanding. But there were none to be found. Only a gnawing emptiness, a void that threatened to consume me. I tried to push the thoughts away, to focus on the future, but they clung to me like shadows, refusing to let go. The weight of their actions pressed down on me, suffocating me, stealing my breath. I missed my sister, Sarah, terribly. We used to share everything, secrets whispered in the dark, dreams painted on the walls of our shared room. But now she was just another face in the crowd, another voice echoing their lies. I tried calling her once, my fingers trembling as I dialed the number. But she didn't answer. I left a message, my voice cracking with emotion, begging her to understand. But she never called back. The silence was deafening, a final confirmation that I was truly alone. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months. I became a ghost, drifting through the city unseen, unheard. I changed my appearance, cutting my hair short, dyeing it black, anything to erase the last vestiges of the girl I used to be. I wanted to shed my old skin, to become someone new, someone stronger, someone immune to their pain. I tried to reason with them, to explain how their actions had affected me. I wrote a long letter to my parents, pouring out my heart, detailing every instance of favoritism, every moment of neglect. I poured my heart and soul into it, hoping that it would reach them, that it would make them see the error of their ways. I mailed it, my hands shaking, my heart pounding with anticipation. But weeks passed and I received no response. No phone call, no email, no letter. Only silence. It was as if I had ceased to exist, as if I had been erased from their lives. The rejection was crushing, a final blow to my already shattered heart. I realized then that they were incapable of change, that they were too entrenched in their own patterns of behavior to see the truth. I had given them a chance to redeem themselves, to make amends, but they had failed. And with that failure, any last glimmer of hope died within me. The resentment hardened into something darker, something more dangerous. A burning desire for justice, a relentless need to make them understand the depth of my pain. The city, once a refuge, now felt like a cage. I was trapped, suffocated by the weight of their indifference. I started having nightmares, vivid dreams of confrontation, of revenge, of them finally acknowledging the pain they had caused. I would wake up in a cold sweat, my heart racing, my body trembling. The line between reality and fantasy blurred, and I found myself consumed by thoughts of retribution. I knew I couldn't continue living like this, haunted by the ghosts of my past. I had to take action, to reclaim my power, to make them pay for what they had done. The plan that had been simmering in the back of my mind began to take shape, becoming more concrete, more elaborate. I started gathering information, researching their lives, their routines, their vulnerabilities. I wanted to know everything about them, to understand their weaknesses, to exploit their flaws. I knew it was a dangerous path, that it could lead me down a dark road, but I was past the point of caring. I was driven by a force that I couldn't control, a burning desire for justice that consumed my every thought. My brother, Ethan, remained the centerpiece of their world. Every social media post was a shrine to his achievements, every conversation revolved around his future. It was as if I had never existed. The injustice of it all fueled my anger. I attempted to talk to my parents one last time, arranging a tense meeting at a neutral coffee shop. I laid out my feelings, calmly and rationally, explaining how their favoritism had shaped my life, how it had left me feeling worthless and unloved. I pleaded with them to see things from my perspective, to acknowledge the damage they had caused. But they refused to listen. They dismissed my feelings as teenage angst, accusing me of being dramatic and ungrateful. They defended their actions, claiming that they had always treated us equally, that I was simply imagining things. The conversation devolved into a shouting match, with accusations and recriminations flying back and forth. I left the coffee shop feeling defeated and hopeless. I realized that there was no reaching them, that they were incapable of understanding the depth of my pain. Any hope I had harbored for reconciliation vanished, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. From that moment on, I knew that revenge was the only option. I was done trying to reason with them, done trying to earn their love. I was going to make them pay for what they had done, to make them feel the pain that they had inflicted upon me. The plan began to solidify, every detail meticulously crafted, every contingency accounted for. I was no longer the victim, I was the architect of their downfall. The diner became my whole world. Day in, day out, the same greasy smells, the same monotonous orders, the same blank stares from customers who barely saw me. It was mind-numbing, soul-crushing work, but it was a distraction. It kept me from dwelling on the past, from succumbing to the darkness that threatened to engulf me. But even in that bleak environment, there were moments of unexpected kindness. A regular who always left a generous tip, an older waitress who offered a sympathetic ear, a dishwasher who shared his dreams of becoming a musician. These small acts of humanity kept me afloat, reminding me that there was still good in the world, even if I couldn't find it in my own family. But then came the call. A voice, strained and choked with tears, informing me that Ethan had been involved in an accident. He had been driving under the influence, lost control of the car, and crashed into a tree. The details were sketchy, the prognosis uncertain. My parents were at the hospital, frantic with worry. Sarah had been trying to reach me for hours. A wave of nausea washed over me, followed by a strange sense of detachment. It was as if I were watching a movie, observing someone else's life unfold. Ethan, the golden child, the center of their universe, lying broken in a hospital bed. The irony was almost unbearable. I hung up the phone, my hand trembling, my mind reeling. I felt nothing. No sadness, no sympathy, no relief, just an empty void, a hollow echo of what used to be. I went back to work, mechanically taking orders, pouring coffee, wiping down tables. The world seemed to spin around me, oblivious to the turmoil raging inside. That night I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in my narrow bed, haunted by images of Ethan's accident. I tried to conjure up some emotion, some sense of connection, but it was no use. The years of neglect and resentment had severed the ties that once bound us. He was a stranger to me, a symbol of everything that had gone wrong in my life. As the night wore on, a new emotion began to surface. Guilt. Guilt for not feeling anything, guilt for harboring such dark thoughts, guilt for abandoning my family in their time of need. I knew I should go to the hospital to offer my support, to be there for my parents, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. The thought of facing them, of pretending to care, was unbearable. I was trapped in a cycle of resentment and guilt, unable to break free. Days turned into an agonizing blur of hospital visits and hushed conversations. Ethan was in a coma, his condition fluctuating between stable and critical. My parents were consumed by grief and anxiety, their faces etched with worry. Sarah tried to bridge the gap between us, urging me to forgive and forget, to put the past behind us. But I couldn't. The wounds were too deep, the scars too raw. I felt like an outsider, an unwelcome guest in their private tragedy. I went through the motions, offering empty words of comfort, performing perfunctory acts of support, but inside I was numb. The guilt gnawed at me, poisoning my thoughts, clouding my judgment. I started drinking heavily, seeking solace in the oblivion of alcohol. The cheap liquor burned my throat, numbing the pain, silencing the voices in my head. I would stumble home late at night, reeking of alcohol, collapsing into bed in a stupor. The next morning I would wake up with a pounding headache, filled with regret and self-loathing. The cycle continued, day after day, a downward spiral of despair and self-destruction. I lost my job at the diner, unable to cope with the demands of the work. I spent my days wandering the streets, aimlessly drifting from one bar to another. I was a shadow of my former self, a broken, lost soul. One night, after a particularly heavy drinking binge, I found myself standing on a bridge, staring into the dark, swirling water below. The city lights shimmered on the surface, a distorted reflection of my own shattered life. The temptation was overwhelming. To simply let go, to end the pain, to escape the darkness. I leaned over the railing, the cold wind whipping through my hair. The water beckoned, promising oblivion. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and prepared to jump. But then a voice inside my head screamed, "No!" A spark of defiance, a flicker of hope ignited within me. I couldn't give up. I wouldn't let them win. I had to find a way to reclaim my life, to break free from the chains of resentment and guilt. I stumbled away from the bridge, my body shaking, my mind racing. I knew I couldn't continue down this path of self-destruction. I needed to change, to heal, to find a new purpose. That night, I made a decision. I was going to stop drinking, to seek help, to confront my demons. I started attending therapy, talking about my childhood, my family, my pain. It was a long, arduous process, but slowly, gradually, I began to heal. I learned to forgive myself, to let go of the guilt, to accept the past. I realized that I couldn't change what had happened, but I could control my future. I started exercising, eating healthy, taking care of myself. I found a new job, working as a receptionist at a small office. The work was mundane, but it gave me a sense of structure and stability. I started reconnecting with old friends, rebuilding the relationships that I had neglected. I discovered new hobbies, painting, writing, gardening. I found joy in the simple things, the beauty of nature, the warmth of human connection. As I healed, my perspective began to shift. I started to see my family in a new light, not as villains, but as flawed human beings, struggling with their own issues and insecurities. I realized that their favoritism towards Ethan wasn't a personal attack on me, but a reflection of their own unresolved traumas. I began to feel a sense of compassion for them, a desire to help them heal. But the anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface. The need for justice, the desire to make them understand the depth of my pain, hadn't gone away. It had simply transformed, becoming more focused, more deliberate. I realized that revenge wasn't about inflicting pain, but about exposing the truth. It was about holding them accountable for their actions, about making them face the consequences of their choices. And I knew exactly how to do it. Their weakness wasn't just Ethan. It was the carefully constructed image of perfection they presented to the world. The perfect family, the successful children, the happy home. That image was a fragile facade, concealing a dark underbelly of secrets and lies. And I was going to shatter it. I was going to expose their hypocrisy, to reveal the truth about their favoritism, their neglect, their manipulation. I was going to use their own carefully crafted image against them, turning their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. The plan began to take shape, every detail meticulously crafted, every contingency accounted for. I was no longer a victim, I was the architect of their downfall. The girl they broke was gone, and something cold and calculated had taken her place. I smiled sweetly at Sarah during our strained visits to the hospital, offering to bring them coffee, to handle the insurance paperwork, anything to appear the dutiful daughter. Inside, I was meticulously documenting every interaction. Every tearful outburst from my mother, every strained silence from my father, every platitude from Sarah. My phone, seemingly innocently placed on the table to catch up on work, was recording everything. The audio was crystal clear, capturing the subtle nuances of their voices, the barely concealed resentment that still lingered beneath the surface. I even invested in a small, discreet camera disguised as a pen, tucking it into my pocket whenever I went to the hospital. The footage was grainy, but it picked up enough visual information to corroborate the audio recordings. The plan was intricate. I was building a comprehensive record of their behavior, their words, their actions, a digital archive of their deception. It was a dangerous game, but I was careful. I cleared my phone's cache daily, transferred the files to an encrypted hard drive, and deleted all traces of my activity. I knew that if they discovered my plan, everything would be ruined. But the risk was worth it. The thought of exposing their lies, of shattering their carefully constructed facade, fueled my determination. One afternoon, while helping my mother sort through Ethan's belongings, I stumbled upon his laptop. It was password protected, of course, but I was prepared. I had spent weeks researching hacking techniques, learning how to bypass security systems, how to crack passwords. It was tedious, painstaking work, but I was relentless. Finally, after hours of trial and error, I managed to gain access. The laptop was a treasure trove of information. Emails, documents, photos, videos. I meticulously copied everything onto my encrypted hard drive, then erased my tracks, restoring the laptop to its original state. As I sifted through the data, I discovered something truly shocking. Ethan had been involved in a scheme before the accident. A risky, illegal operation. The details were hazy, but it involved a lot of money, a powerful group of people, and a high degree of risk. It seemed that Ethan's carefully cultivated image as a golden boy was nothing more than a carefully constructed lie. The realization sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't just about favoritism and neglect anymore. This was about something much bigger, much darker, and it gave me an even stronger edge. The closer I got to uncovering the truth, the more paranoid I became. I changed my routines, varying my route to work, avoiding crowded places. I was always looking over my shoulder, convinced that I was being watched. I even started carrying a small pepper spray in my purse just in case. One evening, as I was walking home from work, I noticed a car following me. It was a dark sedan with tinted windows. I tried to ignore it, but it stayed close, matching my pace. My heart began to pound. I ducked into a crowded store, hoping to lose them in the crowd. But when I came out, the car was still there, waiting. I broke into a run, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I could hear the car accelerating behind me, its headlights blinding me. I darted down an alleyway, scrambling over fences, desperate to escape. Finally, I managed to lose them, hiding in the shadows until the car disappeared. The incident left me shaken, but it also confirmed my suspicions. They knew what I was up to, and they were trying to stop me. It was time to accelerate my plan, to bring everything to a head before they could silence me. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when I discovered a hidden file on Ethan's laptop. It was a video recording, taken just days before the accident. In the video, Ethan was talking to someone about the scheme. He was nervous, agitated, clearly regretting his involvement. He confessed to feeling trapped, to wanting to get out. He even mentioned that he was planning to go to the authorities to expose the whole operation. The video was damning evidence, proof of Ethan's illegal activities, and a clear motive for someone to want him silenced. It was the smoking gun I had been looking for. Now, all I had to do was present it to the world. I contacted a journalist, someone I trusted to be fair and unbiased. I sent her an encrypted email, outlining my story and offering her the evidence. She was skeptical at first, but after reviewing the files, she agreed to investigate. I knew that once the story broke, all hell would break loose. My parents' carefully constructed world would crumble around them, but I was ready. I was finally ready to expose the truth and reclaim my life. The day of reckoning was at hand. The journalist, a seasoned professional named Sarah Miller, no relation, thankfully, moved with a speed I hadn't anticipated. Within days, she had verified the information on Ethan's laptop, cross-referencing it with public records and confidential sources. The story was explosive, a prominent family embroiled in a web of deception, illegal activities, and a potential cover-up. Sarah Miller called me, her voice tight with excitement and apprehension. "This is huge," she said, "but it's also dangerous. You need to be prepared for the fallout." I told her I was ready, but the truth was, I was terrified. I knew that once the story broke, my life would never be the same. My family would be destroyed, their reputation ruined, their carefully constructed world shattered. But I couldn't back down now. I had come too far, sacrificed too much. The truth had to be exposed, no matter the cost. Sarah Miller arranged a meeting with her editor, a powerful figure in the media world. I presented my evidence: the audio recordings, the video footage, the documents from Ethan's laptop. The editor was stunned, his face growing paler with each revelation. He immediately greenlit the story, promising to dedicate his full resources to its publication. The plan was simple: they would publish the story online, then follow up with a print edition. They would also alert the authorities, providing them with all the evidence I had gathered. The timing was crucial. We decided to wait until Ethan was out of the coma, so he could face the consequences of his actions. It was a cruel decision, but it was necessary. He had to be held accountable for his crimes, just like everyone else. The days leading up to the publication were agonizing. I barely slept, haunted by nightmares of my family's reaction. I imagined their anger, their betrayal, their despair. I knew that they would never forgive me for what I was about to do. But I couldn't let their feelings cloud my judgment. This wasn't about revenge, it was about justice. It was about exposing the truth and holding them accountable for their actions. I spent my days preparing for the storm, gathering my resources, securing my safety. I moved out of my apartment, fearing that my family would try to retaliate. I changed my phone number, cutting off all contact with them. I even hired a lawyer, just in case. I knew that they would come after me, but I was ready. I had spent years planning this moment, anticipating every possible scenario. I was no longer the victim, I was the architect of their downfall. The journalist had one final request. She needed a current photo of me to run with the story, something that showed the transformation. I hesitated. Exposing my face felt like the final step, the point of no return, but I understood the necessity. People needed to see the person behind the story, to connect with the pain and the resilience that had fueled my quest for truth. I agreed. We met at a park, a public space where I felt safe. She snapped a few photos, capturing the determined glint in my eyes, the faint smile that hinted at the satisfaction to come. As she took the pictures, I felt a sense of liberation. The fear was still there, but it was overshadowed by a feeling of empowerment. I was finally in control of my own narrative, ready to tell my story to the world. The article was scheduled to drop on a Tuesday morning. I woke up early, my heart pounding in my chest. I made myself a cup of tea, trying to calm my nerves. I turned on the television, watching the news channels, waiting for the story to break. The minutes ticked by, each one feeling like an eternity. Finally, at 8:00 a.m., it happened. The headline flashed across the screen. Local family embroiled in illegal scheme, daughter exposes dark secrets. My name was right there, alongside a recent photograph. The world was about to know. I braced myself, waiting for the inevitable. My phone started ringing nonstop. It was reporters, friends, acquaintances, all clamoring for information. I ignored the calls, focusing on the television. The news anchors were discussing the story, dissecting the evidence, speculating about the fallout. The online article was already going viral, shared and commented on by thousands of people. The reaction was swift and decisive. People were outraged, disgusted, and demanding justice. The comment sections were filled with messages of support for me and condemnation for my family. It was a vindication, a confirmation that I had done the right thing. But the satisfaction was short-lived. I knew that the real battle was just beginning. The police were already at my parents' house, conducting a search. My father was taken into custody, his face pale and drawn. My mother was hysterical, screaming and crying as she was led away. Sarah was nowhere to be found. Then the phone rang. An unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello," a cold, distorted voice on the other end said. "You shouldn't have done that." My blood ran cold. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice trembling. The voice chuckled. "Someone who's going to make you regret everything." Then the line went dead. I slammed the phone down, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew who it was. The people involved in Ethan's scheme. They were coming after me. I had exposed their operation, and now they wanted to silence me. I was in grave danger. I had to disappear, to go into hiding before they could find me. I grabbed my bag, throwing in a few essentials: my laptop, my encrypted hard drive, my pepper spray. I ran out of the apartment, heading for my prearranged safe house, a remote cabin in the mountains. I knew they would be watching me, tracking my every move. But I had a plan. I had anticipated this scenario, and I was prepared. I drove to a nearby bus station, buying a ticket to a small town in the opposite direction. I knew they would be following my car, so I had to throw them off my trail. I boarded the bus, taking a seat in the back. I watched out the window, scanning the crowds for any suspicious faces. I saw a dark sedan pull up to the station, two men in suits getting out. My heart skipped a beat. They were here. I ducked down in my seat, hoping they wouldn't see me. The bus started moving, pulling away from the station. I breathed a sigh of relief. I had escaped for now. But I knew they wouldn't give up easily. They would keep searching, keep hunting me down until they silenced me for good. I had to be careful to stay one step ahead of them. My life depended on it. As the bus sped down the highway, I glanced back at the city's skyline. A wave of sadness washed over me. I was leaving everything behind: my friends, my job, my life. But I had no choice. I had to protect myself to survive. I was a fugitive now, running from powerful enemies who wanted me silenced. But I wouldn't give up. I would keep fighting, keep exposing the truth, no matter the cost. Hours later, the bus pulled into a deserted rest stop. The driver announced a 15-minute break. I stayed in my seat, wary of leaving the bus. But I needed to use the restroom, so I reluctantly got up and walked towards the rest stop building. As I was washing my hands, I saw something in the mirror that made my blood run cold. A reflection of a man standing behind me, his face obscured by a baseball cap. He was holding something in his hand, something that glinted in the light. It was a syringe, filled with some unknown substance. I knew what he was going to do. He was going to inject me, to knock me out, to take me away. I had to act fast. I spun around, grabbing a handful of water and splashing it in his face. He recoiled, momentarily blinded. I seized the opportunity, kicking him in the groin. He doubled over in pain, dropping the syringe. I ran out of the restroom, screaming for help, but there was no one around. The rest stop was deserted except for the bus driver who was sitting in his seat, oblivious to what was happening. I knew I was on my own. I ran towards the woods, hoping to lose him in the trees. He was right behind me, his footsteps pounding on the ground. I could hear him breathing heavily, his anger palpable. I stumbled through the underbrush, branches scratching my face, thorns tearing at my clothes. I could feel him gaining on me, his hand reaching out to grab me. Just as he was about to catch me, I tripped and fell, landing hard on the ground. I looked up, and there he was, standing over me, his face contorted with rage. He raised the syringe, ready to inject me. This was it. This was how it was going to end. I closed my eyes, bracing myself for the impact, but then something unexpected happened. A loud crack echoed through the woods. The man screamed, clutching his chest. He stumbled backwards, collapsing to the ground. I opened my eyes and saw a figure standing behind him. It was Sarah Miller, the journalist. She was holding a gun, pointing it at the man on the ground. "Get away from her," she said, her voice cold and determined. "Or you're next." I couldn't believe my eyes. Sarah Miller, the journalist, was my savior. But why? "Sarah, what are you doing?" I stammered, still reeling from the near attack. She kept the gun trained on the downed man. "I've been investigating them too," she explained, her voice surprisingly steady. "Ethan wasn't just involved, he was going to expose them. They silenced him." It turned out Sarah had been digging into the story long before I contacted her. She'd suspected foul play in Ethan's accident and used her journalistic resources to uncover a conspiracy that reached far beyond my parents' petty favoritism. We left the man there, unconscious but alive, knowing the authorities would soon arrive, alerted by Sarah's contacts. We couldn't risk staying. She had a car stashed nearby, and we drove through the night, heading towards a different safe house, one even more remote than the cabin. Over the next few days, Sarah and I worked together, piecing together the final pieces of the puzzle. The evidence we had was overwhelming, enough to bring down not just my parents, but the entire network of corrupt individuals involved in the scheme. She leaked more details to other trusted journalists, ensuring the story couldn't be suppressed, no matter what my family tried to do. The pressure was immense. The news cycle was a frenzy. My parents lawyered up, issuing denials and attempting to discredit me, but the evidence was too strong, the witnesses too credible. Then came the day Ethan woke up. He was confused, disoriented, but alive. Sarah and I visited him in the hospital under heavy guard. He remembered the accident, the feeling of being run off the road. He remembered the fear, the desperation to escape the people he'd gotten involved with. When he saw the evidence we had gathered, his face crumbled. He knew it was over. He agreed to cooperate with the authorities, providing them with even more information about the scheme. The dominoes began to fall. Arrests were made. Indictments were handed down. My father was charged with multiple counts of fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. My mother, though seemingly less directly involved, was charged as an accessory. Their reputation, their wealth, their entire life came crashing down around them. Ethan, facing his own legal battles, vowed to make amends for his past actions. He testified against the others involved, helping to dismantle the organization from the inside. The trial was a media circus. Every detail of the scheme was laid bare, exposing the greed and corruption that had festered beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect community. My parents were found guilty. They faced lengthy prison sentences, their carefully constructed world reduced to rubble. Ethan, though facing a lesser sentence due to his cooperation, would forever carry the weight of his actions. As for Sarah, she became a celebrated investigative journalist, her career skyrocketing. And me, I testified, told my truth, and watched as justice was served. I walked away from it all. Changed my name, moved to a different state, started a new life. I still think about them, about what happened, about the choices we all made. There are no winners in situations like this, only survivors. I saw my mother's face as she was escorted from the courtroom, her eyes hollowed, her spirit broken. I saw my father's defiant glare turn into a defeated stare. They lost everything, I just smiled. It wasn't a happy smile, it was a smile of closure, of acceptance, of finally being free. The nightmares eventually faded, the paranoia lessened. I rebuilt my life brick by brick on a foundation of truth and honesty. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Revenge isn't sweet, it's necessary. It's a harsh medicine, a bitter pill, but sometimes it's the only way to heal. It's the only way to reclaim what was stolen. It's the only way to find peace. Would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more justice.